product management. But he's one of the best product managers that I've ever worked with. So please give him a warm welcome to the stage, Sherif Mansour.
This is not a true story, but I am known as a wannabe designer at Atlassian, so it's going to take Alistair's job next year. Thanks for coming, everyone. This is Painting a Vision. For those of you who don't know me, Sherif, I've been at Atlassian for about 6 or 7 years now, almost. And throughout those 7 years, I've worked on quite a few products. Some of the products here. And I feel like I was just reflecting on with Alistair, actually, before this conference started, on almost every one of these products have had like one vision setting project almost every year. So I'm kind of known as the guy who fakes things at Atlassian. I don't actually do anything for real. Everything I do is sort of fake. But it's sort of like a vision setting project. And so the stuff I've done have been like either a bunch of prototypes or concepts or a lot of videos. We've been doing a lot of fake videos of like, hey, this is what the product could look like in a few years' time for each of these. And there's a lot to share about for painting a vision. This is kind of my take on the rough life cycle of painting a project vision. Everything from forming a team, setting goals, defining and exploring your problem, and then agreeing on how you're going to communicate and present your vision. I would love to give a 40-minute talk on this, maybe summer next year, that's my goal. But there's a good book I can highly recommend, Sprint, from Google Ventures. If you haven't read it, it takes you through 5 days on how to paint a vision for your product. It's more how to paint a vision at a feature level, but you can up-level it if you like. It's a very practical book, great read. I wish I read that last year, or I wish it was out last year, actually, because learned a lot of stuff from it. So I can't cover all of the things. So what I'm going to do today is I try to pick the top 3 things that I feel like I've learned from a lot of mistakes or whatever, or the things that came up in our retrospectives from each of our vision setting projects that we've done at Atlassian that I feel are really important for you to take to your projects. For example, if I'm going to do another vision project, I'm probably going to come back to these 3 things to start off with. All right, so my first tip is really about asking a question. Your vision project should really be a question you want to answer. So you want to frame it as something you need to do. And this helps with all sorts of things, goal setting, research, when you define your problem, etc. And so you need to work out what is it that you want to answer, but I think what's equally as important, within what time frame. So when you want to set a vision statement, you kind of want to say we want to answer this question by this date, and this is really important to anchor, because how you set a vision for 1 year is going to be very different to how you set a vision for 3 years, and eventually even 10 years. I'm joking about 10 years. Don't bother. Maybe you do, but you see Microsoft produce their visions for the future of work. You can YouTube that. It's actually a pretty cool video. That's like a sort of 10-year vision. I would imagine most of you aren't doing 10-year visions because it changes so much by then. But 1 and 3 year visions are very different. 1 has to be extremely realistic. Your team has to feel like they can get there. 3 years, you could be a bit of a stretch. You could have some blurry concepts in there, and you'll work it out as you go. So just some examples for you. I just came out of a 4-month project last year to paint a vision for a whole company, and this is the question we were tasked to answer. What does a unified Atlassian product offering look like by 2018? 2018 had to be very realistic, not too far out, but had to be far out enough that we can, inspire people. So that was what we were tasked to answer. Another thing you might have is a phrase like this: how might our customers interact with each other? So these are the kinds of questions you want to start your vision project with. And what's been great about this? 1, it helps you define success. You know you've reached the end of your vision project when you can answer that question, and when other people in your company can answer that question too. Secondly, it helps you focus your team. The biggest risk I've seen in all vision projects that I've worked on is the amount of time you can spend on them, because you can debate and talk about everything, because nothing's built and you're just dreaming up stuff forever, and you need to know when to stop. And this really helps your team know when to stop, and I'll talk a little bit about this in my next point. And lastly, it really helps you to inform how you're going to do testing and get playback from your audience. So what you want to do is set a question for your vision project, and throughout your project, you want to test your vision, whether it be concepts, prototypes, videos, with people, and see if they're answering the question that you set to answer with the answer that you expect them to give you. So that's number 1. Start with a question and think about a time frame. Tip number 2 is work out your definition of done. Now, we do this in software teams. You hear about this a lot in software teams. When is a story done, etc. You need to be thinking about the same thing in a vision project. And you need to define two things. One is, when is your actual vision project done? When do you feel like you're complete? And two, when is a concept good enough? Because when you set a vision, you're going to have 10, 20, 30 concepts. And you need to work out how much you need to spend time exploring these concepts. Because you're not speccing them out and building them. You're just kind of painting something that's directionally in the right place. So we've been using, we used to joke around this with my last vision project. We would say, yeah, it's done when we're 51% aligned. What does that actually mean? Well, for us, that kind of meant like, we all kind of agree it's directionally correct. There's a lot of details we need to flesh out, but it's good enough to communicate the concept to someone. Or for some of you, you may want to use the phrase directionally correct. Well, that's a mouthful on day 2. For some of you, you may want to use this, or others, you may have stakeholders that you need to keep happy. And so your definition of done might be, once we get the rubber stamp from management or this key stakeholder. So you need to be thinking about that. This is an example of a definition of done from my last project. For us, we wanted to have something, this is for all our concepts, by the way. How do we know when a concept is done? So for us, it had to be something when it was good enough, when we could give it to another team and they would flesh it out in a lot more detail. So they had just enough information to get started and all the things that we've talked about. Now they need to go and work out the details. So what are the things we would give to the team when we feel like a concept was defined within a vision? We gave them what we call a project poster. Now this is a very boring one. I took out some images, could have had some things that we haven't shipped yet for you guys. But it's something like this, but I think what's important to note is the sections. So we gave the teams, hey, this is what we think we should be doing. This is why we think we should be doing it. This is how we would possibly measure success. And it's not too detailed, it's very high-level stuff. Hey, we talked about these 5 solutions that could solve this problem. What do we already know? And I think the most important thing out of this is, what are the things we need to answer? Because usually in your vision project, you'll finish with 1,000 more questions than you did when you started. And those questions, and a prioritized list of those questions, is very important for those teams to pick up and go, now let's work out how we're going to build, or how we're going to get to this vision. So that was the definition of done for a concept. What about when you know your project's done? In this example here, we've got, we were producing a video, and what we had, the vertical list is all the acts and the scenes for a video we were producing. And across the top we had, is the story done? Is the content done? Is the visuals done? And is the animation done? So for each part of the video vision that we were doing, our definition of done is when we ticked all of this. And this is a wallboard that sat behind our team that we updated every single day to work out where we're at. So for example, is the story done? We had a massive story wall that we'd update every single day for different acts and different scenes. And we'd talk about, what do we want to communicate in the vision? Do we agree that this is the best story to do that? If I pick up one of these cards, then we would agree on the content. What's the person going to do that's actually going to communicate that? Okay, in this example, we want someone to receive a notification inside the app so we can communicate that you can respond quickly. And then we'd go ahead and produce it. So we'd produce a video. This is the most fanciest one we've done, with animations and all that stuff. This is all kind of faked out. Someone's working at his desk. He gets a notification, and he clicks on it. And one main thing we wanted to communicate is, you want to be able to respond quickly to your notifications. So definition of done, super important. Why? You need to know how to level discussions, because you can be talking about, oh, but when he or she clicks on that, is it going to do this? And no. Too much detail for a vision project. So you need to level the discussions appropriately. Number 2, build a shared understanding with your team and when you know you're done. And you need to know when to move on, because as I said, you can spend forever defining every single thing that you're talking about. My last tip is to over-communicate. Now, it sounds really obvious, but in all the vision projects I've done, everyone says, I wish we communicated more in every single retrospective, hands down. Communicating your vision, either writing a blog post, sending an email, or a prototype or a video, doesn't actually mean people understand it. So you need to over-communicate it. I thought this analogy explained it really well. I saw this on the internet the other day. Big circle is really what you think. Second one is what you can actually put into words or video or some communication form. This is what you end up saying to people. And you know what? This is probably reality. This is what people actually end up understanding. And so communication is such a critical part of painting a vision. So how do we do this? Number 1, start your vision project with a communication plan. Number 2, brainstorm some tactics. Wide variety of tactics. Are we going to do blogging? Are we going to do emails? Are we going to bring stakeholders into our vision room once a day to give them an update, to make sure they're talking the same language we are? There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do there. 3 is tied back to your measure of success. How do you know that you're successful? And so some examples. 4 is talk. Every time you talk to someone, hey, did you watch the video? What did you think? I thought this. And I'm like, oh, we really didn't want to communicate that. That came across wrong. Let's go back and change the video. So talk. Hands down, very important. This is an example of actually Alistair, who's here. The last vision project I worked with him on, he put up this communications plan. Hey, this is what we're going to do. This is the person who's responsible for it. This is how often we're going to do it. And do it and follow up with it. And assign a single owner for every type of communication you're going to do. When we finished our last vision project, towards the end, we started producing different cuts of our video. And we needed to work out which video answered the question that we wanted to know. So we formed focus groups inside the company, and we sent them a survey. And this was the first question we asked them is, what are your main takeaways? And the answers we're looking for here are the questions that we set at the start of the project. Are they giving us what we kind of wanted to hear? And there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can add to your survey, like how did you feel about the video, overall length, and that kind of stuff. But I think what you want to do is test that people take your key takeaway out of the video before you kind of ship that to the rest of your team or company or whoever it is. So make sure you test your communication activities to make sure they're successful. And that's kind of my 3 tips. And number 1, make sure you're starting your vision project by asking a question. By what, and more importantly, by when. Second point is make sure you agree on your definition of done for 2 things. When is your project complete, and when are the concepts within your vision complete? And lastly, over-communicate. Agree on a communication plan, come up with some tactics, and make sure you agree on how you're going to define if your vision project is successful. That's it from me. I'll be at the back if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Awesome.